Yeah.
How did you get into this field? What was your inspiration?
Into makeup effects?
Yes.
Oh, it's an old story, but I saw Man of a Thousand Faces when I was 12, and I flipped out. I wanted to be a makeup artist. Yeah, and I just wanted to be him, you know, when I grow up. Get it?
Your first film?
Pardon me?
Your first efforts, professional efforts.
Oh, what were they?
Yes.
Oh, a movie called Death Dream. Yeah. Then I did Deranged for Bob Clark. Then Martin and Dawn of the Dead, Night Riders. Just, you know, I took a leave of absence from college to do Dawn of the Dead, and I haven't been back since. I just keep getting scripts. I'm sorry, I'll get you in a second, okay? Way back. If I had 2 movies to do, and one was a lot of money and no creative freedom, and one had a lot of creative freedom, well, here's the thing. How many times have you seen, what about, I was reading about Henry, the serial killer thing. There was not a lot of money in that thing, but it's a scary, I haven't seen it. They tell me it's a scary, scary film. Now, what's the difference between that and a big budget film that doesn't scare you? The money, right? I mean, or no, the creativity. So I would definitely go for the creativity because even with $5, I mean, if you're a writer, I would say don't think about how much money we have. Write whatever you write, and we'll figure out how to do it. You know, that's where the creativity is. So I would go for the creativity, of course. Yeah.
What's going to happen in the Night of the Living Dead remake, and also have you begun casting?
What's going to happen to the Night of the Living Dead remake, and have I begun casting? Yeah, we start pre-production Monday on the remake, and we talked yesterday about some of the casting. If you remember the first movie, Harry, the guy in the basement who comes up, I'm talking to Michael Ironside about playing that part. Okay, I'm talking to Michael Dorn, Worf, about playing Ben. He's interested, but he thinks that he might be still shooting Star Trek by the time we're geared up, but maybe not. He also doesn't mind working for Scale Plus 10, which is great, because that's another limitation for us. I'm also talking to Steve James. Do you know Steve James? Yeah, about Ben. He's my first choice. I think, you know, what happens if, as a director, I think if you hire an actor who, before they open their mouth, you have an impression from them, you're way ahead of the game. And as soon as you see Steve James appear, you know that he can do the job, so that's what I'm really after. But I think there's a built-in audience with Michael Dorn because you've never seen him without his makeup, you know, and he's just such a pleasant guy. You can't believe it. He's Worf, this Klingon, but without the makeup on, he's got these high, pretty eyebrows, and he's got this pleasant face. I just wonder if he can be mean enough, you know, or not, or strong enough. Because, you know, as Worf, he keeps getting his ass kicked on. I want to see him go in there and, you know, and take care of somebody, but he's always, you know, they're in a meeting and in the conference room, and Worf has an idea, and they go, no. And he's always right, you know, he fight, yeah, they should have fought, you know, so. I don't know, we go on forever about him. Yes, he's asking what the requirements are, how do we hire people who do makeup effects. You know, I might see a portfolio where this guy's just a great sculptor, and then I see that he's made some molds from his sculpture and applied it well. Well, you know, we probably will hire that guy, or at least start an interest in that person and keep a file on him. But normally, the thing that dictates how many people we can hire are, of course, the producers. So if they say you can hire 5 people, well, we're gonna go grab 5 people who, each person is terrific and can do the best work. So if there's 3 people on set, there's always 2 who do everything, working in the workshop. Now we might hire somebody who does mechanics, and that's all we'll hire them to do, and they don't have to worry about sculpture or that stuff, yeah. Because those guys are rare. There are people who do makeup effects who can do their own mechanics, and that's even, you know, icing on the cake. But sometimes, if, let's say we can hire an unlimited crew, there'll be 3 people there who just walk in off the streets, showed us a picture, and they're working for us. You know, not for as much money as other people, but you gotta be, in my case, I was in the right place at the right time, and I had a portfolio. The portfolio is the most important tool you can have to get work. That's how it happened for me.
What kind of schooling is that when there's not that much professional effects moving around? There's a lot of people that say, oh, opposition and all they're doing is big stuff in cars.
No, I know. I find that most schools, and I don't know a lot about the schools, so maybe I shouldn't say too much about their bad faults, but they cost a lot of money, and I've heard that some of them you just sit around and watch videotapes all day. There used to be no answer to the question, where to go to learn makeup effects. There's a school in Pittsburgh that has my photograph on their brochure, and I don't teach there, you know. There are people from New York who call me and say, hey, I'm about to go to the Art Institute. How often do you teach a week? And I say, I don't, you know, I just don't go. There are people in the school who are pissed off being there because they don't teach makeup effects. So you got to be real careful.
I've done it the hard way.
Yeah, there's the people that are there found it the hard way. But now, the only place that I recommend is Dick Smith's correspondence course. You know, you call 914 information, Dick Smith on Murray Avenue in Larchmont, and that's the first step to becoming, I think, a special makeup effects artist. You have a year after you get the course, which is 20 volumes, installments I mean, videotape, slides. You have a year to send him 5 examples of your work. If he likes it, you get a certificate that says that you studied with Dick Smith. Anybody will hire you if you have that. If he likes you, forget it. Everybody has to like you. Yeah. I like to forget the Ripper. Yeah, thank you, Greg. You know, I did one day on that movie, one day. They had already shot the movie and they called me about being a Ripper when you finally meet the Ripper. They gave me a lot of money and they said, you know, we hired this guy who looks just like you to play through the film until we meet you. And it turns out I saw the film and the guy 6 foot tall has an afro hairdo. And they did medium shots on him. God, I was so embarrassed. I usually ask how many people have seen the Ripper and then I get on my knees and apologize for it, okay? But I like to forget the Ripper. The proudest one, Day of the Dead. I like the effects of Day of the Dead. The Prowler, I thought the Prowler was good. Anybody who ever sees an uncut version of that. Night Riders was just a blast to do. Yeah, thanks. I guess that's it. Yeah, you got a question? Thanks a lot. Listen, you guys made my weekend. I can't tell you how great it's been. It's the greatest weekend of horror I've ever seen.
I think this is question and answer, so whoever wants to ask a question, I'll try and answer. However ludicrous the question. Well, don't all question at once. Right there.
What can you tell about Evil Dead 3 that
all right, the question is, what can I reveal about Evil Dead 3? It'll be more expensive, and it'll be in the past. Because the end of part 2 was the poor sap is stuck in a different time period. And so 3 will be his battles back in 1300 AD. Kind of a, you know, Connecticut Yankee in the King Arthur's court sort of thing. A modern man. Yes? Get hurt doing any of the stunts in the Evil Dead films. The pain goes away on payday. No, yeah, it was hard, but it wasn't, it was just hard. But I knew that after, if you put a lot of effort in, it's really, it took about 11 weeks to do Evil Dead 2. After it's over, you get to reap the benefits of it forever, because then it's done. So if you can live through the 11 weeks, it's really a very small amount of time. So, yeah, right here.
How many weeks did you spend shooting
The first Evil Dead pretty much took forever. We started in Tennessee in like November of 1979. Is that 11 years ago now? And we were supposed to get out of there in about 6 weeks, but we didn't leave until after 11 weeks. It just took longer. There were some days where we really only got one shot. And so then we came back to Michigan, we kept running out of money. So we'd raise some more money and then shoot some more. Probably in total weeks, like 15 weeks of if you were to lump all the shooting together. So. Anybody else? Yeah, right there. Yeah.
How did you meet Sam, and what convinced you that Sam could make it?
Sam as in Sam Raimi, the illustrious genius behind the Evil Dead film. I met Sam in high school. We were in drama class. We were both doing terrible mime presentations. And we sat together and said, gee, your mime was really bad. He said, yeah, so was yours. So we were instant friends. Sam had dabbled in magic as a youngster. And so that's what got him into basically fooling people. And movies are a great opportunity to fool people, to make you think you're seeing something that you're obviously not. And the second part of your question was what convinced me that he could do it? We made a lot of Super 8 movies together in high school. And, you know, he just seemed to have a flair for what needed to be done. So together with another guy, Rob Tappert, we raised money independently from doctors and lawyers and bankers and builders for the first Evil Dead. That was made completely independent, which is nice, yeah. Nice and loud.
What's the basic plot of Maniac Cop 2?
Maniac Cop 2, the basic plot is my character dies page 11. Well, because you know that nut Bill Lustig, who's the genius behind it all, and Larry Cohen said, do we want the good guy to keep going or do we want the bad guy to keep going? And it took them about a second to decide that they wanted the bad guy to keep going. Because that's the way it goes, like with Friday the 13th, you know. Jason's never gonna die. What was the one where his face got ground off with a propeller at the end?
6.
It was 6? Oh my God, it was 6? I'm in the theater and you see it. Well, take him down to the bottom of the lake, that'll do it. So he's under the water and you just see his face ground off with the propeller, and I could just hear the producer saying to the director, kid, you can do anything you want. Kill him, cut him in half, but he's got to come back at the end. His eyes have to open, and then cut to black or whatever. So that's kind of the way that series went. Same with Freddy. He'll never die. He'll never die. There's no way. So our feeling is Ash will never die. Because there's how many series are there where the poor, sad, good guy keeps going? It's a drag. I'm trying to convince him to let Ash have a cage fight with Freddy or something. Put him in a cage and see who comes out. And they're not real interested, though. Anybody else? Who out there are perspiring young filmmakers? Ah, yeah. Truth comes out. Anybody having any trouble raising money? Here, I got 100,000. No. You know how to raise money. Okay, who's a filmmaker? You were leaping up and down back there. Somebody back there, stand up. How do you propose to raise money for a film? You don't know? Is to sell drugs? I actually haven't heard that approach. That's interesting. No. Yeah. Okay, raising money. Okay, how do you think we did it? We got a lawyer. You got to get a lawyer, someone to put a real thick, ugly legal document together that tells investors why not to invest in the movie. Because if the movie loses money, you have to protect yourself and say, hey, I warned you, it's only a movie. You have to put in risk factors and tax elements and why you should invest and all that stuff. And if you can get a lawyer to do it cheap, like a friend of the family is a good way to start. And what we did is we got a lawyer to do it really cheaply, and then if we raised all the money, he'd get a pretty good chunk of dough. So that's how we did it. Took a long time. Plan on spending a lot of your own personal cash, hard-earned money, and about a year. If you're not willing to do that, then I'd say don't bother, because it's really hard. It's really hard. You can keep your day job or your night job, but just you got to stay with it. Yeah. Question is, do I plan on making any other horror films? Probably for a while, because that's usually what you get, the parts that are offered. They assume that you are a horror guy, and so that's what you get. Yeah. Do I make an appearance in Darkman? I can't tell you that. No, actually, I do not. A mold was made of my face at one point. That was, in theory, the last. Well, I can't tell you. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, I will actually do autographs over there at the autograph table afterwards. So bring them all by and we'll have a little signing party. Yeah. What's that? Crime Wave Part 2? You're a funny guy. We almost didn't have Crime Wave Part 1. That film wasn't released at Escape. I don't think so. I don't think so, unless it enjoys a fabulous video life or something. I don't know. It was a well-meaning movie.
Quiet down, please.
Yeah. All right. We're near the end of our tether. A couple more, yeah.
How hard is it to act off the special effects and get us on the mic?
How hard is it to act off the special effects? Sam would play behind the camera and be the monster, so it was all right. You just got to keep him laughing, 'cause he's going, ah! It's okay. You just get used to it. You put a piece of tape where the monster is, and you just have to get the sight lines correct and stuff. It's a little ridiculous overall, but that's the whole process.
How did I get started? Well, at the time, when I started, looking for parts and everything, they started to finally do a lot of horror movies. They were starting to do the Friday the 13th and everything. And I was lucky because I screamed real well, and I could act frightened, and I could run and imagine heads being cut off and things like that. So that's how I started into it, because I was lucky when they were doing a lot of horror films then. And I looked the perfect victim. And then, in terms of being typecast, I don't really worry about that, because I think a lot of actors worry too much about being typecast. And I'm having fun with what I'm doing, so I'm not going to worry about it. I like being the Scream Queen. 30 years from now, I'll be, I was the Scream Queen. Be pretty silly. I'll show my scrapbook of all my demon makeups and things, and everybody will be bored with me. Okay, any more? Okay. Have there been parts? Yeah, there have been some parts I've turned down because they were too typical and too, the girl goes in the shower and the killer comes in and kills her, or, her and her boyfriend are smooching and, all of a sudden, they get killed. But yeah, there are some that I definitely turned down because the scripts are bad and there's too much violence in terms of naked women violence.
Start out wanting to do this movie.
Well, I didn't start out, when I was a kid, I just loved watching the horror movies, and it would have been great to be in. I like Murder in the Rue Morgue and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all that. And I started out very shy as a kid. It wasn't until I moved to LA I think I was 18, that I started getting into the business, because I was shy. This year I've been pretty busy. I co-produced some things with David Dakota, which is Murder Weapon, and also another film called The Girl I Want. And some other films that'll be coming out this year, Robot Ninja, which were done by some people in Akron, Ohio. Did a good job. They have Burt Ward, the boy wonder, in it. Oh, he's great. Also, I did Sex Bomb, which is a pretty cute, funny movie. It's got, the elements of horror in it. It shows what goes on behind the scenes of low-budget horror making, which is scary in itself. And also I did something called Digging Up Business, which I'm not sure when that's going to be released yet, but that's kind of a comedy/horror film. And I just finished, before I came here, Virgin High, and the tagline on that is where it's hard to get in. And, keeping busy, the next project I do is Vice Academy 2, which is a comedy. And then I get to go to Kansas and do a real good horror film, which deals with witches and stuff. How many people like witches here? Yeah, I'm gonna have fun. I love to play witches, so, I've been demons and zombies, so the witch part will be very fun. Anyway, first start off, I don't know if any of you are aspiring actors or okay, they're aspiring zombies or demons, but, expect at first not to get that much money, but get a lot of experience, because, you can work from anywhere from $25 to $50 a day, but if you keep at it and you're good at what you do and everything, you can make $5,000 a day. This year, I tended to do a lot more comedies than horror movies. So, I like doing both, and like what I said before, my favorite is the horror/comedy films, like a Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, Return of the Living Dead type of film. My favorite what? Role? Well, probably Trash and Return of the Living Dead, and also I liked playing in Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. And the reason I liked Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers is I got to chainsaw who I thought was such a cool guy, which was Gunnar Hansen. You know, after what I saw he did in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it was like, it was great to get back at him. How did I get my part? Well, it was a weird thing. They had that movie ready to go about 6 months before, and what happened was the girl who was originally scheduled to play Trash got pregnant. So anyway, they started auditions all over again, so I had to go in and read for the directors and producers. Then, you know, they liked me and they called me back, and I had to go through. In fact, I auditioned with this scene where I'm sitting on the gravestone and I'm telling about how I went horrible, men to eat me up and all that, and I had to do a dance and everything, and so I got it. The only type of movies I wouldn't do are, you know, ones that hurt animals, anything that deals with hurting animals, because I'm into animal rights and that, and I wouldn't do something if it was offensive to me. I don't try to worry about what is going to offend everybody else, I just try to worry about what's going to offend me. Oh yeah, I mean, if there's a part that's right for me, I'd love to, you know, work in a bigger movie and, you know, do something like that. You know, right now I'm doing some reporting work with a station in LA, which I'm finding to be a lot of fun. I'll hopefully have my own show if the pilot sells, and things like that, you know, going around and interviewing the people in B movies and horror movies and things like that. So that's a lot of fun. I like doing that. So, but thanks for coming, and I had a great time. And they're gonna have it in New York next year again? That's great. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun here. And I guess maybe some of you will be in LA too. Okay, bye, thank you.
I was influenced by many filmmakers. Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock. How many people like Steven Spielberg in the audience? How many people feel he's an underrated filmmaker? Nathan. I love that guy's movies. But for some reason, I don't know if it's jealousy or what, he just can't get the credit that he's due, I always felt, in Hollywood. But anyways, I love Stanley Kubrick as the boss. Probably one of my favorite films is Metropolis, Fritz Lang's great classic. So, a lot of great filmmakers, and influence is a nice way of saying I rip them off wherever I can. Actually, here's how I go about shooting a scene. I set up the storyboards the night before, and just like any other filmmaker, really. And if something has to be more dramatic, someone's saying something that's growing in intensity, maybe I'll say, okay, let's move the camera in slowly on them. All the old tricks, the same thing as anybody else. It's an exciting sequence of events. I try and break it up into as many little pieces as possible, little pieces of film, and cut them together so that they lead into one another very carefully, like any person doing an action scene. So I guess those are the filmmakers that influenced me. That's basically how I work. Yes, sir. Rob Tapert produced Darkman. Yes, he did. And he was the producer of Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2 also, which I worked with. Yes, and Robert is going to be producing Evil Dead 3, starring the incredible Bruce Campbell, who's in the audience. Yes.
What's after Evil Dead 3?
After Evil Dead 3, I don't know what's next after that. I'd like to do something really interesting. I've been thinking about setting up a Century Cam, a camera that would be placed above certain cities in the United States and overseas that would click off a frame a day at 12 noon over the course of a century. And we'd basically play back this, 15-minute film watching the city rise and fall in the year 2090. I might miss it, but I can at least get the preview I'll bring here at the coming attractions. Yes?
Is this supposed to be the beginning of a whole series of Darkman movies?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just wrote this one as its own thing. But I guess I have no plans for a future Darkman picture. Yes, the call came in to North Carolina where we were shooting. Dino's on the phone, Sam. Dino's on the phone. Oh my God, he hates the movie. Oh my God, I'm panicking, running to the phone. I pick up the phone. Yes, Dino. Sam, do you have a Chevrolet in your picture? A Chevrolet in my, no. You put one in. That's it. 16 weeks I've been shooting. All right, I'm going to put a Chevrolet in the picture. All right. But he was very supportive and really left us alone, and he's a very gentle man, actually. I would recommend he smoke a less stinky cigar, but that's a minor thing. He's been very supportive, and he's going to be back in his next picture, Evil Dead 3. Hey?
In Evil Dead 2, what happened to the Evil Ed dismemberment and all that?
In Evil Dead 2, what happened to the Evil Ed dismemberment? That was a character in the picture that got cut up, and I did cut out a shot in the movie of the body parts on the ground flapping away. But not for any censorship reason, it just, it didn't work for me. The angle that I chose was wrong, and the body parts didn't look realistic. So rather than have that in there, I just dumped it. Because Evil Dead 1 was so unsuccessful in the United States that so few people had seen it that I felt that I had to retell it if I was ever to make, if anyone else watching the movie would understand what was going on. Because it's such a strange circumstance that these evil spirits have been awakened from this Book of the Dead, tormenting this one survivor, that I felt I had to do a little retelling. And I'd hoped that the people who had seen Evil Dead 1 wouldn't mind, since it was so many years ago. Maybe I guessed wrong on that one, too. I think I did. No, but I think they're gunning for me. Because I've done 2 pictures so far that got X ratings with them. And each time we said, no thanks, we'll release it without your rating. And now I think they're really, they're going to be furious. But I don't think it's that bloody of a picture. A new rating system? I don't know if they need a new rating system or not. I think ratings are for the birds anyways. I just think I ignore them. It's just a group of PTA people who are, I love PTA people. But I mean, just a group of these people who are not, I don't know, they don't seem like an accurate representation of the film-going public to me. And then they decide what the rest of the people will see and at what age they shall see it. And I never liked that stuff. Right now with Evil Dead 3, I've been writing it, and even this morning I was working on it with my brother. And frankly, I'm very worried about Ash. I don't think he's going to get out of this one, folks. I wish it were different, but they got him in the pit, and it looks bad. The chainsaw won't start. I had a miserable night last night about the whole thing. Any last questions?
Yeah, and I thought Crime Wave had a lot of odd charm. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. In War of the Roses, it looks like Danny DeVito stole one of your shots, one of your flying plate shots. What do you think of that?
Well, he's a very visual guy, but I think that he was just working on similar avenues and came up with a similar thing after he saw Crime Wave. No, I'm joking, of course. Yeah.
On Evil Dead 3, are you going to go back to a heavier tone, or are you going to keep it light as in Evil Dead?
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to go back to a little scarier tone, because I miss the fear. I really like horror movies that scare me, man. I love that. And I'm going to try and hold down the gore content, but make it scary, because I like scary pictures. I haven't seen one in a long time. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate that very warm response for the trailer for Darkman. Thank you very much. It made me feel great.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye.
Actually, I spoke with
I spoke with the people at Fox, and I believe that production will commence in the fall on Aliens 3.
I know that you and Jim wrote Terminator. Are you ever going to write anything again?
I find that I have the greatest respect for writers because I think it is the most difficult job and also the one that gets the least amount of glory. And if I'm trying to run a company at the same time, I simply can't do both. So, not in the foreseeable future. Working with Jim, to me, is really the highlight of all the projects that I've done. I think he's one of the most visual directors. He's got an incredible talent for working with actors. And obviously, I think he's an extremely talented screenwriter. We've worked together so many times that it's almost like working with another half of yourself. It's great because I can generally anticipate what's going to go wrong before it does and hopefully have a couple of solutions to suggest. And there is a good possibility, although this cannot be put in print, that there will be a Terminator 2. So, no, it has not been, it's not been set for principal photography, there's no screenplay yet, but that would certainly be a project that we would collaborate on. The question was who will be in the cast of Aliens 3. There is a good possibility that Sigourney Weaver will reprise her role as Ripley, but that's dependent on the screenplay. Jim Cameron will not be directing Alien 3. There is no director on at this point. Let me just say on the record right now that I think it's a big mistake that people start. The biggest problem with critics was they started reviewing the film based on budget. And I will just go on record as saying, from all the information I have, from all the big movies that came out last summer, it cost the least. However, our budget became the most talked about item in the production. And it was simply because I think we tackled technology that didn't exist and we had to create it in order to make the film. It cost well under $45 million. And not including marketing, by the way. And a number of the other films that came out last summer cost over 50. I grew up as a voracious reader of speculative fiction. In fact, I reviewed science fiction books for the local library and for the local newspaper. It's always been a love of mine. And working with Roger Corman, I got the background to tackle films that perhaps other producers might find impossible, and help put together a team that turns fantasies into celluloid reality. At the same time, I'm attracted to other projects as well, and I have a film that opened not to a great deal of fanfare last weekend, Downtown, which is an action film but doesn't have any special effects or science fiction elements, except perhaps the premise.
How bad was it to film the Abyss? And the second part is, how is the state of independent film today?
The first part of the question was, how hard was it to make The Abyss? Well, we didn't nickname it The Abuse for nothing. It is one of those situations where if we had known then what we know now, there's a strong likelihood that we may have said, yeah, this would be nice, but we'll let our grandkids do it because maybe by that time the technology will exist. Imagine any high-tech company planning a product that has to be out in less than a year, and the technology does not exist at that time in order to create that product. That's what we did. We had to create the technology in order to make the movie. So it was the most daunting thing that I've ever done, the most challenging, but at the same time, I look back on it and say, I'm really glad I did it. I'm proud of what we accomplished, and I think we pushed the outer edge of the envelope in terms of underwater filmmaking technology as well as visual effects. And the second question was?
Let's say independent film today. I notice a lot of the bigger companies are buying most of the theaters. It's been harder to release independent films.
I think that last year was a bad year. I mean, in terms of the number of companies that failed, the Vestrons, etc., that are no longer with us. But I think that the amount of attention that films like Sex, Lies, and Videotape and My Left Foot and the more unusual offerings are the attention they're getting in the box office receipts, that and Drugstore Cowboy, films like that, I think there's going to be resurgence again. The problem that you point out is that the Paramount consent decrees in which the large studios could not own exhibition in theaters, the fact that is no longer in effect means that it's going to be more difficult for films that are not done under the edges of major studios to open up in a broad release. But I also don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I think the important thing is that the films continue to get made and that we have an opportunity to find them, even if it is perhaps in a regional release rather than, every film is not best served by being in 2,000 theaters. The question regarding the Terminator is really an interesting one because the Terminator was initially planned as Jim Cameron's and my calling card in order to be able to make more movies. And it was initially planned as something like a $3 million release. Arnold's salary alone would have meant there would have been very little left over for production value and shooting days. But initially, the actor who ended up playing a police detective and then played Bishop in Aliens, Lance Henriksen, and then went ahead and starred in Pumpkinhead and was also in Near Dark, was envisioned as the Terminator. The reason being that the background of the Terminator, in terms of philosophy, that Reese explains when he comes here, is that they were meant to be able to infiltrate. Now, I don't know about you, but it requires a little bit of logic leap, literary license to accept Arnold Schwarzenegger as an infiltrator. I mean, he certainly does stand out in the crowd. So it was one of those things in which his casting seemed so right in terms of what he brought to the role, but it was not the way the role was initially conceived. And yes, it is true that there were people, not with the production, but with a studio that wanted Arnold to play the Michael Biehn character. And that was how, believe it or not, his name initially came up, was to play Reese and not to play the Terminator. In fact, the casting that came along with Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Reese was O.J. Simpson as the Terminator. It's amazing those movies that could have been. Well, I've been asked to wrap this up, and first of all, I really want to thank you because each and every one of you, because you're the people that I make films for, and
And I remember when I was a kid, looking at Dracula movies, it was always the appeal of Dracula. It was always the idea of being able to attract virgins across a crowded room. It's difficult finding them now, but at the time it was and living forever and getting to fly and turn to wolf and do all that stuff. Now, one of the paradoxes of horror movies, I think, is that time and time again, we are told to hate these creatures. That's the whole structure of those horror movies, right? The whole structure of horror movies is you kick monster ass, and you feel better for it. Now, in Nightbreed, I want to kick human ass and feel better for it. Because there's something touches my heart about monsters. People say to me, the most often asked question is, well, don't you have No, the most often asked question is, where do your ideas come from? That's the most often asked question. None of you ask it, please, because I don't have a fucking clue. But the monsters, well, do you not have nightmares? I always say my nightmares are my dreams are other people's nightmares. Because it seems to me that we're gathered here because we like the weird, because we like the perverse, because we feel at home with the dark, we feel at home with the monstrous. Sorry? And I think it's time we actually started to stand up in larger numbers, even than these, possibly in Congress. I think Fango should have somebody, a senator out there, somebody, you know, the Fango representative who would go into the Oval Office once in a while and whisper in George's ear, you know, you're not being real nice on monsters at the moment, George. Forget Noriega. What about the undead? I kind of like that. Maybe if we could have a state created simply for monsters. It could be Wisconsin. All naturals, all human beings would be driven out of Wisconsin. And we'd all go in there and kind of visit our favorite guys. Undead guys, guys who turn into suppurating, vile Cronenbergian creatures. And have a good time. I've been talking with some people about the Clive Barker ride at a couple of amusement parks. Now this is a kind of interesting idea. You know, you've seen Star Tours, you've seen Captain EO. Now it's time to be delivered through puddles of slime into the interiors of human bodies, maybe be shot out through an erect penis. I think that's a ride that we all need to do. Well, we've all taken it once, right? In a very early form. I think it's time for that sort of alternative thinking about theme parks. Enough of this rubbish. Questions from the floor. There are hands shot up at the back. I mean, to take an example of subversion in action. I have two projects coming in February. I have The Great and Secret Show, which is the novel, and Nightbreed. Now, both of them have structures which kind of flip over the world, you know, and ask you to look at the world from a different point of view. Now, in the conventional horror structure, I think what happens is you return to the status quo again. You know, the perfect example of the conventional structure, I think, is Poltergeist. You know, in which nobody dies. So, I mean, you know, death isn't really an issue. Losing your, you know, it's a family in jeopardy kind of story. And the monsters, whatever those monsters are finally thrown out, destroyed. Now, going back to something I was saying earlier, that plugs in something I was saying earlier, I like the monsters. That's what I go to horror movies for. One of the things another question that's always asked in interviews, usually by people who don't like horror movies, is, don't you think horror movies were better when you didn't see the monster? They'd say, bollocks. I mean, I like to see the monsters. I've never liked the kind of 50s tradition of monsters where you waited through the first, monster movies, where you waited through the first 90 minutes, you know, seeing shadows or footprints. Or somebody, you know, a POV, you know, moving in on somebody who screams and covers their face. And then in the last 5 minutes, you see the creatures. Nightbreed is a hymn to monsters. It's monsters everywhere. They talk, they fornicate, they play cards. And they reproduce. So, and you know, that's what's interesting to me. The most subversive thing is to say, believe your dreams, believe what your dreams are telling you, and my dreams tell me that the monsters are what I want to be. So what's my favorite movie of all time? Of all time? Oh, do I have to admit to Snow White? Really? Actually, you know, one of the scariest things in movies, this is not a joke, one of the scariest things in movies I saw all last year was Ursula from Little Mermaid. She scared the shit out of me. Did you see that one? Honestly, and she sang as well. A body to die for and all those tentacles. Somebody over here.
Any possibility of film version of something like Damnation Game or any of your early work?
Well, the problem, here's the real problem. The MPAA is increasingly a problem. And one of the great things about the tapping the vein stuff and the Hellraiser comics is we're actually getting images on the page which we wouldn't get on the screen. It's literally true. I don't know if any of you guys have read the Hellraiser comic. Great stuff. Really great stuff and very strong. Now, if you would go through those comics with a purple pencil and strike out the frames the MPAA wouldn't allow, you'd have a lot of purple. Now the trouble with the Damnation game is, Anthony Breer, our favorite zombie, wandering through the Damnation game, not realizing he's dead, getting thrown out of cabs because he smells bad, and, the MPAA is going to have major problems with that. The stuff, the really visceral stuff, at one point we were going to do Son of Celluloid. I would still like to do Son of Celluloid. It'd be a good thing. But an all-singing, all-dancing cancer is a real difficult thing for the MPAA, They've got no sense of humor, those guys. Sir.
I was in Rome not very long ago making a film in Italian, and my wife and I went to the waxworks, the wax museum in Rome. Sometimes they're very good and sometimes they're not so good. And we went and had a look at it. And as we walked down the stairs to walk out of the waxworks, two young Italians came in and stopped dead. Well, I'm used to that. And one of them said to me in Italian, "You're the Hollywood actor." And I said, "Well, sort of, And the other one, whose expression didn't vary, and said, "And you're alive." Now, it's not very often that an actor gets the chance to face, or perhaps that's not the right word, to meet. It sounds like a confrontation otherwise. An actor gets the chance to meet the people like yourselves for whom we do what we do. Everything that I do on the screen, and this is really true, everything that I do is for you. And you may have heard this from other people, no doubt you have. I'm quite sure they all meant it too. You are the audience, you are the public, you are the judges. And for me to get a chance to meet you, to talk to you, to see you, something doesn't happen enough in an actor's life. You get onto a talk show or something, you get asked the same questions, you get the same answers. If it's taped, it gets cut. If it's live, somebody's doing 4, 3, 2, and so on, and you're off. So anyway, I think I've said enough. Yes. My favorite picture? Oh, no question. But we go now. No question. Excuse me facing that way, but I'm getting the questions from the other round there in a minute. And The Wicker Man, best script, best character, best story, and best part, I think, best performance, as far as I know. I might tell you one thing. I was speaking to some people in Los Angeles yesterday, and they said that I could say to you here that there are plans afoot to do the sequel. And that everyone who's been approached to do it, including myself, of course, has said yes. And it will be the same cast. Ooh. It's very difficult for an actor to answer questions about another actor. It's an unwritten rule, that you don't discuss them. Yes, as I said earlier, Ian Fleming is my cousin. I know who James Bond was in Ian's mind, because he based the fictional character on some real people. It was a sort of a mixture of a lot of real people. He worked in naval intelligence during the war. My sister also worked in naval intelligence during the war with Ian in a thing called Ultra, which was what solved the German code machine, Enigma, and so on. And so I know the background of James Bond and everything connected with it. I think they've all been good in their ways, and they've all been completely different. naturally, they're different people. I think Tim Dalton, you know, the first one was the first one. He's now done 2. Sean did what, 5, 6, 7? I don't know. And Roger did 4 or 5. You have to grow into a part, don't you? And I think he's got the looks, he's got the physique, he's got the action ability, and in terms of credentials, he has the best of any of them, because he's done a tremendous amount of very fine work in the theatre. Very fine indeed, yes. Use it.
Mr. Lee, in spite of what you said about it in your memoirs, my favorite movie is Scream and Scream Again. I was wondering if you could tell me what the scriptwriter Christopher Wicking is doing these days, and whatever happened to the actor who played Captain Conrad, Marshall Jones.
I really don't know. There's a simple answer to that. It's the shortest answer I'll probably give you this evening. I honestly don't know. Was he the man who was in The Other Alien?
He's the
other alien?
Yeah.
The one with whom I had the conversation in Trafalgar Square?
Yes, that's
that was an experience. With the whole of London interrupting. I had no idea. I've never seen him again. Sorry, I can't tell you. Yes.
What was it like working on the set of Horror Express? That's one of my favorites.
Oh, that was fun. That was fun. We made it outside Madrid in the depths of the winter, and Peter and I, and Telly Savalas, and it's been an enormous success, that film, all over the world. Tremendous success. And it was a very entertaining picture. It was a little tongue-in-cheek, of course, you know, it was sort of a black comedy kind of thing. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
What was Les Bowie like to work with?
Les, alas, as you know, is no longer with us. Les Bowie, he was the one, for your information, who did the beginning special effects on the Hammer films. The only thing he once did to me was I had to reach out, I remember, and touch Stephanie Beacham, which is not anything anyone would object to. And as I reached forward my fingers, she has a cross around her neck, and my fingers started to smoke. Somebody thought that one up. And to get that effect, they painted my fingers with acetic acid, and then they sort of blew a hairdryer on them. Well, they smoked all right, and I lost the tips of my fingers. So funny things happen in films, you know. He was very clever, very good, and paved the way for a lot of people today.
I wonder if it's true, as I've seen quoted, that you've appeared in more films than any other actor?
No, of course it isn't true.
No? Do you know how many? Do you know exactly how many you have appeared?
I know what I've been told. If you include TV films, that's half-hour films, black and white films, Douglas Fairbanks, and so on, and so on, and so on, William Tell, and so on. The number is now 201. But that is not a record. I promise you. There won't be another 201, but John Carradine told me he'd done over 400. And I think that John Wayne did over 200, and Tony Quinn told me he'd done over 200, and I think Glenn Ford has done over 200. It may be a record for a British actor, whatever records mean.
What percentage is in horror films?
Very small.
Well, what do you think of the state of horror films today?
Oh, that's out of left field, that one, isn't it? Well, I'm always being asked this question, what do I think of horror movies today? That's a tough one to answer, because I hardly ever see them. Somebody asked me the other day how many pictures I'd done in the last year or 18 months. In fact, I've done 12 pictures in the last 18 months. And they said, well, were they all small parts? And my answer was the one you always give: there are no small parts, only small actors, and short parts or long parts. And they said, well, did you play any long parts? And I said, yes. The last 2 pictures I did were long parts, if you like, major roles. And then I don't know how I said this, but I said the right thing for once. I said I was much too busy to play long parts. So, you know, I'm trying to answer your question that way, and it's so long ago since I was doing those films. I'm rather rusty on the subject, I'm afraid. The last time a picture scared me, the last time I really jumped out of my seat, which hasn't happened very often, in fact it's only happened twice. First time was in Psycho, at the head of the stairs. I really went up in the air, like most people. The second time was in Alien. I went through the ceiling in that way. Okay. I'm going on too long. I'm being told I've got to keep quiet. Shut up. So I've answered your question vaguely. The pictures we made in those days, in my opinion, demanded performances from the performers. Today, and in some cases rightly so, certainly in a film like Gremlins, it's special effects and so on and so forth. If you can marry the two perfectly, then you get a wonderful result. And while on the subject of Gremlins, I would like to mention, I have never in my life, never worked with a more remarkable director than Joe Dante. He is a joy to work with. He is a phenomenon. His knowledge is encyclopedic. You know, people come up to me and say, I've seen all your movies. And the only answer I can give is, well, I can only congratulate you or sympathize with you. But at any rate, I think he really has. And he's phenomenal. And to meet a man like this, to have fun on a film set, is a wonderful experience. And we did on this picture, and it's going to be terrific, believe me. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. I had a bit of an interruption here in the broadcast. We're going to take things right from the top.
The expedition in the state. Thank you very much. It's indeed a personal honor for me to be with you today. I know that all of you, as well as the rest of America, have been glued to your television sets. We are indeed impressed with what we see on television. I say, watch television. It does work. I say, television sets always get the job done. I say, television sets are getting the job done today.
We leave you now with some music.